At my son's law school graduation from Wake Forest University, after I drove 11 hours from Harlan County, Kentucky, he stood behind that podium in his cap and gown, looked straight past me into the VIP section, and told 800 people that his stepfather, Victor Ashford, was the reason he'd made it. He called Victor the man who believed in him when nobody else would. His mother was crying in the front row. His professors were nodding. And me, the man who'd raised him alone since he was 7 years old, who'd spent 19 years putting $500 a month into a savings account so he'd never have to beg anyone for anything, I wasn't even a footnote. So I picked up my jacket, walked down the aisle while the applause was still echoing, and drove home. But 3 weeks later, when Victor's real estate empire imploded, and my son came looking for that $165,000, I'd been building his whole life. He found out it was already gone. Every last penny. Before we continue, please subscribe to Stormborn Vengeance and tell me in the comments what time it is where you are right now. My name is Harold Mercer. People in Harlan call me Hal. I'm 63 years old, and I've spent the last 37 of those years teaching woodworking and shop class at Harlan County High School in southeastern Kentucky, right where the Appalachian Mountains crumble into coal country. If you've never been to Harlan, picture this. A town of about 1,600 people squeezed into a valley between mountains that used to be full of coal. Half the storefronts on Main Street are boarded up. The median household income is somewhere around $22,000 a year. There's one traffic light, one Walmart 20 minutes away in Middlesboro, and exactly 0 reasons for a young person to stay unless they've got deep roots or no options. I've got both. My first wife, Margaret, Maggie. Everyone called her. She grew up 2 hollers over from where I did. We met at a church picnic when I was 19 and she was 17. And I knew right then that was the woman I'd spend my life with. We got married at 21, moved into a tiny house on Louver Fork Road that her daddy helped us put a down payment on, and started building a life. I took the teaching job because it was steady work with benefits, and in Harlan County, that's about as good as it gets. Maggie worked as a receptionist at the health clinic in town, organizing patient files and answering phones with a smile that could melt permafrost. When Ethan was born, I was 37, late to fatherhood by Harlan standards, where most guys had kids by 25. But Maggie and I had struggled for years trying, and when that boy finally arrived, 7 pounds 2 ounces at the Harlan ARH hospital, screaming loud enough to wake the whole ward, I held him and made Maggie a promise. Our son would have choices. He wouldn't have to go into the mines. He wouldn't have to pick between bad and worse. He'd have the education and the resources to build whatever life he wanted. Maggie smiled at me from that hospital bed, exhausted and glowing, and said, "Then we better start saving now." So we did. $500 a month. It doesn't sound like much to some people, but on a teacher's salary in Harlan County, it was enormous. It meant I drove a 1,998 Ford Ranger until the odometer broke at 287,000 miles, and I just kept driving. It meant Maggie cut coupons like it was her second job. It meant we never took a vacation that involved an airplane. Our big annual trip was driving to Myrtle Beach in August, staying at the cheapest motel we could find, and letting Ethan play in the waves for a week. But every month, $500 went into that account. Rain or shine, coal bust or not, that money moved. Ethan was 5 when Maggie got diagnosed. Pancreatic cancer, the worst kind, the kind that doesn't negotiate. She fought for 2 years with everything she had. Chemo at the UK Medical Center in Lexington, radiation, experimental treatments that our insurance barely covered. I drove her back and forth, 3 hours each way, holding her hand over the center console while Ethan sat in the back seat watching cartoons on a portable DVD player, too young to understand why his mama kept losing weight and losing hair, but never losing that smile. She died on a Thursday morning in November. Ethan was 7. He came home from school that day, saw the relatives' cars in the driveway, and stopped at the front door. He didn't come in for a long time. When he finally did, he walked straight to me, buried his face in my chest, and whispered, "Is Mama in heaven now?" "She is, buddy. And she's watching over you." Those first years after Maggie died were the hardest of my life. Mornings of packing Ethan's lunch and ironing his school clothes. Evenings of homework help and bedtime stories, trying to do the voices the way Maggie used to. Weekends of Little League games where I was the only dad sitting alone in the bleachers. I learned to cook her fried chicken recipe from the index card she'd taped inside the kitchen cabinet. And even though it never tasted quite right, Ethan always said it was perfect. I kept putting $500 into that account. Maggie would have wanted me to. When Ethan was 9, I met Diane at a teacher's conference in Lexington. She was a third-grade teacher from Pikeville, pretty and put together in a way that Harlan women weren't, with salon highlights and clothes from stores I'd never heard of. She laughed at my jokes. She said she admired what I was doing, raising a boy alone. She said I was brave. Nobody had called me brave in a long time. We got married 8 months later. Diane moved to Harlan, and for a while, things were good. She helped Ethan with his reading. She redecorated the house. She brought a kind of energy into our lives that I didn't realize we'd been missing. But Harlan wore on her. The isolation, the poverty, the way the mountains seemed to close in during winter. She started driving to Lexington every weekend for shopping, for dinner with friends, for air, she said. By the time Ethan was 14, Diane sat me down in the living room on a Sunday evening and said the words I'd been dreading. Hal, I can't do this anymore. This town, this life, it's suffocating me. I've met someone. His name is Victor. He's a real estate developer in Raleigh. He understands ambition. He understands what I need. She left on a Wednesday, packed 2 suitcases, loaded them into a rental car, and drove south to North Carolina without looking back. She didn't say goodbye to Ethan, just left a note on the kitchen table that said, "I'll always care about you. This isn't your fault." Ethan read that note 6 times before he crumpled it up and threw it in the trash. "Dad," he said that night, staring at the ceiling from his bed while I sat in the doorway. "Everyone leaves. Not everyone. I'm right here. And I'm not going anywhere." I meant it, every word. For the next 4 years, it was me and Ethan against the world, just like it had been after Maggie died. I coached his basketball team. I proofread every essay. I sat through every school play, every awards ceremony, every parent-teacher conference. When he started getting interested in law, watching legal dramas, and reading about famous court cases, I drove him to Lexington to visit the University of Kentucky's law library. When he said he wanted to be an attorney, I told him we'd find a way. The savings account had grown. With interest and consistent deposits, it was sitting at about $140,000 by then. Not a fortune by coastal standards, but in Harlan County, it was generational wealth. Combined with scholarships, we could get Ethan through undergrad and maybe law school without crushing debt. That was the plan. Then Victor Ashford entered my son's life. It started when Ethan was 16. Diane had been gone for 2 years, and suddenly she was reaching out. Phone calls to Ethan, Christmas packages delivered by FedEx. Not the homemade gifts Maggie used to make, but expensive things. A MacBook Pro, a tailored suit for prom, legal textbooks with handwritten notes from Victor, who, it turned out, had a law degree himself before pivoting to real estate development. Victor's firm, Ashford and Keene Properties, was one of the biggest in the Triangle area of North Carolina. They developed luxury condominiums, mixed-use commercial spaces, golf course communities. Victor drove a Mercedes S-Class, lived in a 6,000-square-foot house in a gated community outside Raleigh, and had the kind of easy confidence that comes from never having to check your bank balance before ordering dinner. "Dad," Ethan said one evening, looking up from an email on his new laptop, "Victor thinks I should apply to Wake Forest for undergrad. He says the pre-law program there is one of the best in the South. He has connections with the admissions office." Wake Forest, private university. Tuition alone was over $60,000 a year. I'd been thinking Eastern Kentucky University, maybe UK and Lexington, schools where my savings and his grades could cover everything comfortably. "That's an expensive school, Ethan." Victor said he'd help with costs if I get in. I felt something tighten in my chest. "We don't need Victor's money. I've been saving for your education since the day you were born. I know, Dad, and I appreciate it, really. But Victor says it's not just about money. It's about networks. Wake Forest has connections to law firms across the Southeast. The alumni network alone is worth the tuition. Victor says, those two words started appearing in every conversation like a virus I couldn't quarantine. Victor says I should do mock trial. Victor says my LSAT potential is exceptional. Victor says real success is about who you know, not just what you know. What could I do? I wanted my son to have the best. If Wake Forest was the best, I'd make it work. The savings would stretch. I'd teach summer school every year, pick up extra shifts, building furniture on weekends, sell some of the woodworking pieces I'd been making in my shop. We'd manage. Ethan got into Wake Forest with a partial scholarship. Victor covered the gap. Not all of it, just enough to make himself essential. The rest came from my savings and federal loans. A carefully balanced equation that I tracked on a spreadsheet, taped to my refrigerator, updating it every month like a vital sign. For 4 years, I watched my son transform. The boy who'd grown up eating my imperfect fried chicken and shooting hoops on a crooked backyard rim started posting photos on Instagram from country clubs, golf outings with Victor's business associates, dinners at restaurants where a single appetizer cost more than my weekly grocery budget, weekend trips to Victor's beach house on the Outer Banks. His phone calls to me got shorter. His visits to Harlan got rarer. When he did come home for Christmas or Thanksgiving, he'd look around our little house on Clover Fork Road at the wood-paneled walls and the linoleum kitchen floor, and my workshop out back with sawdust on every surface, and I could see something in his eyes that I'd never seen before. Not contempt exactly. More like distance. Like he was visiting a museum of his former life. Everything okay, son? Yeah, Dad. Just, it's different here. Different from what? From everything else? He didn't say worse. He didn't have to. When Ethan got accepted to Wake Forest Law School, one of the top programs in the country, I was bursting with pride. 3 more years, and my son would be an attorney. Maggie's dream, my dream, his dream, all converging. I called him to discuss finances. With your son, the account's at $158,000 now. Between that and scholarships, we can cover most of law school. You'll graduate with manageable debt. We've got a solid plan. Silence on the line. Then, Dad, I need to tell you something. Victor's offered to cover law school. All of it. Tuition, housing, books, bar exam prep. He says it's an investment in the family's future. The family's future. Victor and Diane had gotten married 2 years earlier. I found out from a photo Ethan posted on social media. Victor in a cream-colored linen suit. Diane in a designer dress that probably cost more than my truck. Ethan standing between them, grinning, looking like he belonged. You don't need his money, Ethan. That's what my savings are for. Your mother, Maggie, she and I started putting that money away before you could walk. I know, Dad, and I'm grateful. But Victor's offering more than money. He's introducing me to managing partners at major firms. He's got connections at every courthouse in North Carolina. This isn't charity. It's mentorship. What could I say? That every dollar in that account represented a meal I'd skipped? That watching my son accept Victor's generosity felt like watching him choose the man who'd taken Diane over the man who'd never left? That Maggie would have hated every second of this? Whatever you think is best, son. Law school changed him. Or maybe it just finished what Wake Forest had started. His Instagram became a carefully curated portfolio of success. Networking galas, moot court victories, photos with judges and senior partners, and always Victor, silver-haired and square-jawed, standing in the background like a proud patriarch. My calls with Ethan became bi-weekly, then monthly, then whenever he happened to remember. He was busy with internships, study groups, law review. Victor was mentoring him on litigation strategy, introducing him to clients. My attempts to stay connected felt increasingly desperate. Ethan, I'm driving to Lexington next month for a woodworking convention. It's only 5 hours from Winston-Salem. Maybe I could swing by and take you to dinner? Oh, Dad, that's the same weekend as Victor's firm's annual charity gala. He's introducing me to the managing partner at Parker, Whitfield and Associates. It's a huge opportunity. Of course, another time. But there never was another time. 3 months before graduation, Victor offered Ethan a position, associate attorney at Ashford and Keene's in-house legal division, starting salary $145,000, plus benefits, plus a company car, plus a clear path to eventually running the legal department. Dad, can you believe it? Victor says I've got the sharpest legal mind he's seen in 20 years. That's wonderful, Ethan. I'm real proud of you. Thanks, Dad. Hey, listen, about graduation. I'm putting together the guest list. Mom and Victor will obviously be there. Victor's reserved a private suite at the arena, and he's hosting a dinner afterward at this incredible steakhouse downtown. You should come. I'll make sure you get an invitation. He said it like he was doing me a favor. Making sure I got an invitation to my own son's graduation. The culmination of everything Maggie and I had dreamed about while she was lying in that hospital bed, too weak to hold his hand but strong enough to whisper, "Make sure he has choices, Hal. Promise me." I spent the week before graduation getting ready. Ironed my one good suit, the charcoal one I wore to Maggie's funeral and every formal occasion since. Polished my boots until they almost passed for dress shoes. Got my hair cut at Floyd's barber shop on Main Street. Booked a room at a budget inn outside Winston-Salem because the downtown hotels wanted $250 a night, and I couldn't stomach that. Left Harlan at 3 in the morning. 11 hours through the mountains, through the winding roads of eastern Kentucky, into Virginia, down through the Blue Ridge, stopped once at a Waffle House outside Wytheville for coffee and eggs. The sunrise hit the mountains somewhere around Fancy Gap, painting everything gold and pink. And for a moment, I felt good. My son was graduating law school, top of his class. Maggie would have been so proud. The graduation ceremony was at the Lawrence Joel Veterans Memorial Coliseum. I arrived an hour early, wanting to find my seat and maybe catch Ethan before things started. Families streamed toward the entrance, mothers in floral dresses, and fathers in sport coats, everyone buzzing with pride. I clutched my printed ticket and joined the flow. Inside, the arena was massive. Ushers directed people to different sections. I asked about the private suites and was told those had separate entrances. My ticket said, Section 227, Row P. Upper level. I climbed the stairs and found my seat. Good view of the stage, at least. From up there, I could see the glass-fronted suites along the side of the arena. It took me a minute, but I spotted them. Diane in the second suite from the left, her hair shorter than I remembered, wearing something that looked like it came out of a magazine. Victor beside her, tall and silver-haired, shaking hands with a group of well-dressed people. They were laughing. There was catering. Champagne flutes catching the light. I texted Ethan. Made it. Section 227. So proud of you today, son. Love, Dad. No response. He was probably backstage with the other graduates. The ceremony started. The dean spoke about excellence and justice and the responsibility of the legal profession. The faculty processional, robes and hoods, and tradition. Then the graduates, called one by one to cross the stage and receive their diplomas. Ethan James Mercer, Juris Doctor, magna cum laude. I stood up, clapping so hard my palms stung, trying to catch his eye from section 227. Ethan crossed the stage, shook the dean's hand, accepted his diploma, and turned to face the crowd. His eyes went straight to the suite. He found Victor and Diane, pointed at them, and smiled. That smile. It was the same one he used to give me when I'd show up at his Little League games. But it wasn't aimed at me anymore. He never looked up to section 227. Never looked for me at all. After the diplomas came the student speaker. I hadn't known Ethan had been selected until his name was announced. He'd been chosen by his classmates to address the graduating class. My son, speaking for his entire law school, the pride hit me so hard, it hurt. Ethan stepped to the podium, adjusted the microphone, and began. Today, we don't just celebrate 3 years of case law and constitutional theory. We celebrate the people who made this possible, the mentors who challenged us, the family who carried us, the leaders who showed us what it means to stand for something. He talked about his journey. Coming from a small town in Appalachia, the odds against him. How far he'd come. I want to thank my mother, Diane, for teaching me that it's never too late to reach for something greater. for showing me that happiness is a choice you make, not a circumstance you accept. The camera on the big screen found Diane in her suite, pressing a tissue to her eyes. Diane, the woman who'd left a note on the kitchen table and driven away from a 14-year-old boy without saying goodbye. She was being thanked for teaching about choices. I want to thank the extraordinary faculty at Wake Forest for pushing me beyond what I thought I was capable of. Applause. But most importantly, I want to thank Victor Ashford, my stepfather, my mentor, the man who saw potential in me when I couldn't see it in myself. Victor, you taught me that success isn't about where you come from. It's about the doors you're willing to open and the people who open them for you. You introduced me to a world I didn't know existed. You invested in my future when you had no obligation to. You showed me what it means to have a father figure who builds you up instead of just keeping the lights on. Keeping the lights on. The camera found Victor, standing in his suite, nodding with practiced humility. The audience applauded. The woman next to me whispered, "How sweet." Keeping the lights on. That's what 19 years of sacrifice amounted to. Keeping the lights on. Like I was a utility company. Like every fried chicken dinner and every bedtime story and every drive to Lexington and every basketball game and every $500 scraped together from a teacher's salary in the poorest county in Kentucky was nothing more than basic maintenance. Ethan kept talking, thanking more people, an internship supervisor, a study partner, a professor who'd pushed him to write for the law review, people who'd known him for months or years, not decades. Not one word about the father who'd raised him. Not even a thank you to my dad for doing his best. Not even a vague nod to the man who'd held him when his mother died, who'd wiped his tears when Diane left, who'd driven him to his first day at Wake Forest with a lump in his throat the size of Kentucky. I picked up my jacket, folded it over my arm, stood up slowly, and made my way down the aisle. A few people glanced at me. I kept my eyes straight ahead, pushed through the doors, and walked through the concourse. Behind me, I could hear Ethan's amplified voice continuing his speech, thanking the world minus one person. The May air outside was warm and thick. North Carolina humidity. I stood on the sidewalk and breathed. My phone buzzed. Text from Ethan. "Dad, where'd you go?" "Dinner's at Capitol Grill at 7. Victor's reserved a private room. Some senior partners from Parker Whitfield will be there. Great networking for you." Networking. For me, a 63-year-old shop teacher from Harlan County, Kentucky, networking with corporate attorneys over $80 stakes. Like I was a charity case they could trot out for local color. "Look, this is Ethan's father. He's a woodworking teacher from Appalachia. Isn't that quaint?" I typed back. "Had to leave. Not feeling well. Long drive ahead. Congratulations on everything. Proud of you." 3 dots appeared. Then, "Seriously? You're leaving? Victor went out of his way to include you tonight. Do you know how embarrassing this is?" I put the phone in my pocket and walked to the parking garage. I didn't drive home right away. Drove around Winston-Salem instead. Past the beautiful brick buildings of Wake Forest campus. Past the neighborhoods where Diane and Victor had taken Ethan to dinner parties and charity events. Past the kind of houses that people in Harlan County couldn't imagine living in. Eventually, I ended up at a park somewhere off University Parkway, sat on a bench near a small pond and pulled out my phone, opened my banking app. The savings account stared back at me. 19 years of $500 a month, plus interest, plus the small life insurance payout from Maggie's policy that I'd folded in years ago. 19 years of eating beans and cornbread so my son could eat at Capitol Grill. 19 years of fixing my own truck so my son could ride in a company car. 19 years of Maggie's promise, kept month after month after month. My phone rang. Diane's name on the screen. "Harold, what is wrong with you? You just walked out of your son's graduation speech. Victor is mortified. Ethan is embarrassed. Do you have any idea how petty this looks?" "Petty. You're upset because Ethan thanked Victor. That's it, isn't it? You're jealous." "Diane, I drove 11 hours to watch my son graduate. I sat in the upper deck while you sat in a luxury suite. And my son told 800 people that his stepfather built him up while his father just kept the lights on. Oh, please. You're twisting his words. He was nervous. He didn't mean it like that. How did he mean it, Diane? He meant that Victor provided opportunities you couldn't. That's not an insult, Harold. That's just reality. You did the basics. You fed him, clothed him, put a roof over his head. That's what parents are supposed to do. It's not special. Victor went above and beyond. Victor opened doors. Victor invested in Ethan's future. You kept the lights on. That's your ceiling. I hung up, sat there, staring at the pond. My phone buzzed with texts. Ethan, Dad, Mom told me you're upset about the speech. Come on, don't make this about you. This is my day. Another text, 20 minutes later. Victor says you can still come to dinner if you want. He's not offended. He understands this must be hard for you. He understands this must be hard for me. Like I was a terminally ill patient being offered compassion by my replacement. I turned off the phone. That evening, I sat in my budget inn room, eating a gas station sandwich, watching the local news without really seeing it. I thought about Diane's words. You did the basics, keeping the lights on, your ceiling. Maybe she was right. Maybe in a world where success was measured in starting salaries and luxury suites and connections to managing partners, being present every day for 19 years was just the bare minimum. Maybe I was foolish to think it meant something more. I opened my laptop and stared at the savings account. $165,247.38. All of it designated for Ethan's future, for a down payment on his first house, for his bar exam expenses, for whatever he needed as he started his life. But he didn't need it anymore, did he? He had a $145,000 job waiting, a company car, a stepfather who opened doors. My money was pocket change in his new world. He'd told me as much the last time we'd discussed it. Dad, honestly, Victor's handled most of the expenses already. Keep the money. Put it toward retirement or something. You could probably use it more than I can. I thought about Maggie, about the morning before she died, when she'd squeezed my hand with what little strength she had left and whispered, "Don't let him forget where he comes from, Hal. Don't let him forget what matters." I thought about a kid named Jesse Combs. He was in my shop class 8 years ago, brilliant with his hands, could look at a piece of walnut and see the table hiding inside it. His daddy was on disability from a mining accident. His mama cleaned rooms at the one motel in Harlan. Jesse wanted to go to trade school, learn proper cabinet making, maybe start a furniture business someday. But there was no money, none. He ended up working at the Dollar General instead. Last I heard, he was still there, 8 years later, stocking shelves, when he should have been building things that mattered. I pulled up the website for the Appalachian Artisan Fund, a nonprofit that helped young people from coal country get vocational training and small business grants. They had a scholarship program for students pursuing trades in woodworking, welding, electrical work, and other skilled crafts. I clicked through to the donation page. My cursor sat in the amount field for a long time. Then I typed $165,247.38. I designated it as an endowment for a permanent scholarship fund. For students from Eastern Kentucky, West Virginia, and Southwest Virginia, young people from communities where the mines had closed and the factories had shut down, kids who were brilliant with their hands but had no one to open doors for them. I named it the Margaret Mercer Memorial Trades Scholarship, in honor of my first wife, Ethan's real mother, who believed that working with your hands was just as noble as working in a courtroom. Who'd told me once, while she was building a birdhouse with 5-year-old Ethan in our backyard, "You know what I love about making things, Hal? When you build something with your own hands, nobody can take credit for it but you." The transaction processed. The savings account showed 0. I closed my laptop and slept better than I had in months. The next morning, I drove home. 11 hours back through the mountains, back through Virginia, back into Kentucky. The same winding roads, the same coal towns, the same beauty that most people never see because they're too busy driving to somewhere else. I stopped at the same Waffle House in Wytheville. The waitress remembered me from the day before. "Going or coming, honey?" Coming home. I turned my phone back on when I pulled into my driveway in Harlan. 41 missed calls, 28 text messages, most from Ethan. The first few were irritated. Dad, you seriously just disappeared? Call me back. Then the tone shifted. Dad, I need to talk to you about the savings account. Dad, seriously, call me. This is urgent. Dad, I talked to the bank. They said you withdrew everything, all of it. What did you do? I texted back, donated it. Set up a scholarship fund for trade school students from Appalachia. Kids who'd consider $165,000 life-changing, not pocket change. Named it after your mother, your real one. My phone rang instantly. I answered, Dad, you can't be serious. That money was supposed to be for my future. Your future? You've got a 6-figure job waiting for you. A company car. A stepfather who opens doors that are permanently locked for everyone else. What could you possibly need my keeping the lights on money for? Silence. Then, quieter than I expected, things have gotten complicated. Complicated how? Long pause. Victor's firm is being investigated. The state attorney general opened a case last week. Something about fraudulent property appraisals and investor misrepresentation. The FBI might be getting involved. I sat down at my kitchen table, looked at Maggie's photo on the wall, the one from our wedding day, both of us so young, standing outside the church with the mountains behind us. I'm sorry to hear that, Ethan. The job offer is on hold, indefinitely. Victor's lawyers told him to pause all hiring until the investigation is resolved. And it gets worse. Any attorney who's been associated with Ashford and Keene is being scrutinized. Parker Whitfield already rescinded an interview I had scheduled. 2 other firms in the Triangle pulled their offers to classmates who'd interned with Victor. Nobody wants to touch anyone connected to him right now. So you can't practice law because of the man who opened all those doors. Dad, please. I've got $94,000 in student loans. I was counting on that job to start paying them down. The apartment Victor helped me get. The lease is in his name and they're not renewing it. Mom and Victor are. Things are bad between them. She's talking about leaving again. Of course she is. That's what Diane does when things get hard. I need help, Dad. I need that money. Can you get it back? Can you undo the donation? No. What do you mean, no? I mean the money is gone, son. It's funding scholarships for kids from hollows and coal towns who want to learn a trade. Kids whose daddies got hurt in the mines and whose mamas worked double shifts just to keep food on the table. Kids who'd give anything for the kind of opportunity you called basic. I didn't call it basic. I never said that. You said I kept the lights on. You told 800 people that Victor built you up while your father maintained the minimum. You said he opened doors. You called him your father figure. And you know what, Ethan? You were right. Victor did give you things I never could. So let him give you what you need now. You're punishing me. For a speech. For words I said when I was nervous and stupid and trying to impress people in that room. I'm not punishing you. I'm just done being the backup generator that only matters when the power goes out. Victor showed you what real fatherhood looks like. Great. Let him show you what real support looks like when everything falls apart. This is unbelievable. Mom was right about you. You're bitter and small. Small? Yeah. Small town, small house, small salary, small life. But I was there, Ethan, every single day. When your mother died and you were 7 years old and terrified. When Diane left and you were 14 and confused. When you had nightmares, and when you struck out at Little League, and when you got your heart broken for the first time, I was there. Not because it was my ceiling, because it was my choice. And I'd make the same choice again every time. But I'm done begging my own son to notice. Dad. Goodbye, Ethan. I hope things work out. He called back 11 times. I didn't answer. The weeks that followed were quiet. I went back to my routine, teaching summer shop classes to kids who actually wanted to learn how to build things. Spending evenings in my workshop, making a rocking chair out of cherry wood because working with my hands has always been the only therapy I've ever needed. Walking the trails near Cranks Creek on weekends, letting the mountains do what they've always done, put things in perspective. The news about Victor's firm got worse. It turned out Ashford and Keene had been systematically inflating property values to secure larger loans from banks, then using the excess capital to fund new developments that existed mostly on paper. Investors had lost millions. Victor was indicted on 12 counts of wire fraud and securities violations. The beach house on the Outer Banks was seized. The house in the gated community was put up for sale by the bank. Diane posted on social media that she was moving into a studio apartment in Durham. The caption was a single word: forward. No mention of Victor, who'd apparently cut ties with everyone connected to the case, including her. Ethan's social media went dark. No more networking events. No more photos with important people. No more carefully curated portfolio of success. His last post was a link to a legal aid clinic's volunteer sign-up page, shared without comment. My phone rang on a Tuesday evening in late July. I was in my workshop, sanding the runners of the rocking chair. I almost didn't hear it over the noise. When I saw Ethan's name, I nearly let it go to voicemail. But something in me, the same something that had gotten up at 4 a.m. for Little League practice and driven 3 hours each way to Lexington for Maggie's treatments and put $500 into an account every month for 19 years. That something made me answer. Dad. Yeah, Ethan. I got a job. Legal aid clinic in Durham. It's not a firm. It's non-profit, $38,000 a year, helping people who can't afford attorneys. Mostly eviction cases, tenant rights, small claims. That's honest work. It is. Long pause. I'm living in a one-bedroom apartment near the bus line. No car. I sold everything I could to make my first loan payment. I eat a lot of rice and beans. I know something about rice and beans. He almost laughed. Almost, yeah. I guess you do. Silence stretched between us. The kind that's full of things waiting to be said. Dad, I'm not calling to ask for money. I know that's done. I'm calling because I've had a lot of time to think. Standing in front of a judge, advocating for a single mother who's about to lose her apartment, going home to my own tiny place, counting quarters for laundry. I've had time. Time is good for thinking. I looked up the scholarship you created. The Appalachian Artisan Fund put out an announcement. The Margaret Mercer Memorial Trade Scholarship. They're calling it the largest single donation in the fund's history. I didn't know that. The first recipient was announced last week. A girl named Ava Halcombe from Letcher County. She wants to study furniture making and woodworking at the Appalachian Center for Craft in Tennessee. First person in her family to pursue any kind of post-secondary education. Her father was a coal miner who got laid off when the last mine in her county closed. His voice cracked. She wrote a thank you letter. The fund posted it on their website. She said, "Nobody in my family ever had someone believe in them enough to invest in their future. This scholarship tells me that someone out there thinks my hands are worth something." I had to set down the sandpaper. Couldn't see through the blur in my eyes. Mom would have loved that, Ethan said quietly. And I don't mean Diane. I mean Mom, Maggie. I remember building that birdhouse with her in the backyard. I remember she said something about making things with your hands. You remember that? I remember more than I thought I did. I remember her laugh. I remember she smelled like vanilla. I remember she used to sing me to sleep and she couldn't carry a tune to save her life, but I loved it anyway. She couldn't carry a tune at all. Worst singer I ever heard. Most beautiful sound in the world. Another long pause. I could hear him breathing, hear the emotion cracking through. Dad. I stood at that podium and thanked everyone in my life except the only person who never left. The only person who showed up every single time. Not because he had connections or money or anything to gain, but because he loved me. And I'm so ashamed of that. I can't sleep most nights thinking about it. You drove 11 hours. You sat in the upper deck. And I couldn't even say your name. I leaned against my workbench. The cherry wood rocking chair sat half-finished beside me, smooth and warm under the shop lights. Victor told me things, Dad. For years, subtle things, about how you were holding me back, how staying connected to Harlan would limit my potential, how a real father pushes his son toward greatness, instead of, his words, settling for adequate. And I believed him because he had the money and the house and the car and the life that made it look like he was right. I thought success looked like him, I thought fatherhood looked like him. And now? Now I live in a one-bedroom apartment, and I help people who are about to lose theirs. And every morning I wake up and I think about you putting $500 into an account every month for 19 years. And I think about you driving a truck with 287,000 miles on it so I could have choices. And I think about Mom dying, and you holding everything together when your world was falling apart. And I realize I already knew what a real father looked like. I was just too stupid and too dazzled to see it. We talked for 3 hours that night. Really talked. He told me about the pressure, the subtle and constant campaign by Victor to position himself as the superior father. The way wealth becomes its own argument. The way a 22-year-old with no perspective can mistake generosity for love and sacrifice for weakness. I told him about the years after Maggie died. The nights I'd sit in the dark after he went to sleep, overwhelmed by the weight of doing everything alone. The mornings I'd look in the mirror and wonder if I was enough. The way I'd talk to Maggie sometimes, standing at the kitchen sink, telling her about Ethan's day, asking her if I was getting it right. "I'm coming home," Ethan said finally. "Not to Harlan, necessarily, but closer. There's a legal aid office in Lexington that's hiring. I applied last week. If I get it, I'll only be 3 hours away." He got it. Started in September. Salary was $41,000, which in Lexington was just enough to cover a modest apartment and his loan payments, if he was careful. He drove a used Civic he'd found for $4,000. He ate a lot of the fried chicken recipe I'd taught him, Maggie's recipe, though he said his version still wasn't as good as mine. We had dinner every other Sunday. I'd drive to Lexington, or he'd come to Harlan. Nothing fancy. Meatloaf, cornbread, the pot roast Maggie used to make on cold evenings. We sat at my kitchen table and talked about his cases, his clients, the people he was helping. A veteran about to lose his house. A grandmother fighting an unlawful eviction. A young couple being taken advantage of by a predatory lender. "You know, Dad," he said one evening, pushing back from the table, "I make less in a year than Victor spent on wine. That a problem?" "No." He smiled, and it was the old smile, the real one. "It's just funny. I spent years chasing his version of success, and now I'm doing work that actually means something. Work that changes people's lives. That's what Maggie would have wanted for you. I know that now." One Sunday in October, we were sitting on my porch, drinking coffee, watching the fog lift off the mountains. Ethan's phone buzzed. He looked at it, smiled, and handed it to me. It was an email from the Appalachian Artisan Fund. Ava Halcombe, the first Margaret Mercer Scholar, had completed her first semester at the Craft Center with straight A's. She'd already sold 3 custom pieces at a local artisan market. Her letter was attached. I read it on Ethan's phone, sitting on my porch in Harlan County. "Dear Mr. Mercer," she wrote, "I don't know who you are, but I know what you did. You gave me a chance that nobody in my family has ever had. My father said when he heard about the scholarship, he cried for the first time since his mind closed. He said somebody out there remembers people like us. I'm going to make furniture that lasts. I'm going to build things that matter. And when I can, I'm going to give back to the next kid who needs someone to believe in them. Thank you for believing in me. Sincerely, Ava." I handed the phone back to Ethan. He read it again, then set the phone down on the porch railing. "That's a better return on investment than anything Victor ever promised me," he said quietly. "Yes, it is." "Dad." "Yeah? I'm never going to be able to make up for what I did, for what I said, for all those years I treated you like you weren't enough." I looked at my son, 26 years old, making $41,000 a year in legal aid, driving a used Civic, living in a small apartment, and finally understanding something that all of Victor's money and connections and open doors could never teach him. You don't have to make up for anything, Ethan. You just have to remember. Remember what? That keeping the lights on isn't the ceiling. It's the foundation. Everything else gets built on top of it. He nodded, sipped his coffee. We sat there as the fog burned away and the mountains turned from gray to green, the way they do on October mornings in Kentucky when the world is quiet enough to hear what matters. My phone buzzed once, a voicemail from Diane, probably calling to blame me for something else that had gone wrong in her life. I deleted it without listening. Through the kitchen window, I could see the framed photo on the wall. Maggie holding baby Ethan in the hospital. 19 years ago, a different lifetime. I'd made her a promise that day, holding our son for the first time, breathing in that new baby smell. I told her I'd raise him right, teach him values, help him become a good man. It took longer than I expected, cost more than I'd planned, and required harder lessons than either of us could have imagined. But sitting on that porch with my son, watching the Appalachian morning unfold, I realized I'd kept that promise. Some gifts take 19 years to understand. Some lessons cost everything you've got. Some people have to lose what glitters before they can see what's gold. But in the end, the ones who love you won't be there because of what you can give them. They'll be there because of who you are. Victor never understood that. Ethan finally did, and that makes all the difference. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to Stormborn Vengeance, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever sacrificed everything for someone who didn't see your worth until it was almost too late? Tell me your story. To watch the next video, click the link on your screen. Thank you for watching.